you might have think I've been bragging a tiny bit about this call because okay, I'll confess. Yes, of course, I respect your audiobook narrating, and I think your new venture is amazing. I think you're amazing. But then the minute I found out you were Gideon on Charmed, I was like, oh my God. I'm embarrassed about the levels of fangirl. I think I might be a cliche, like a woman of a certain age that likes to imagine she's younger and, does magic.
Yeah, who doesn't like to do a little bit of magic? It was a great show. I really enjoyed doing that show, and it was intense to do it, but it was fun, a lot of fun.
Well, and there's a really special subject when it comes to that I'd love to explore, but first I want you guys, this is Gildart Jackson. He has been in everything. He's got an amazing new thing coming up with Dreamscape that I'm going to let him tell you about towards the end of the call. He has narrated about 400 audiobooks, and he's done the Peter Granger series, which is where I had originally heard him, and I hadn't realized, when you've heard someone and seen them so many times that you haven't clocked they're the same person. Those people you grow up and you're watching TV and they're always there and you just feel like they're like an uncle or something and you've always known them. But basically, I couldn't wait for this call. I was very, very excited, and I want to know.
Yeah.
Oh, and you guys, the rules, quirky questions, type question ahead. Yeah, Barbara's excited. I didn't warn you about that, so maybe be a tiny bit gentle. And type question beforehand. Okay, so let's get to the good stuff. 10-year-old Gildart, where were you? England, the USA? What were you doing? What was your dream? What did you want to become?
Well, that's a very good question. 10 years old, I was at school in England. I didn't leave England until I was about 22. So I lived in a place called Cheltenham, which is in the west of England.
You were posh.
I don't know about that. My dad had. Now everybody knows there's a place called GCHQ in Cheltenham. It's the American equivalent of the NSA. It's where they get information, for want of a better word. And
like spies.
Well, yeah, more like intelligence, the interpretation of spying.
And your father, was your father working there? Your father did that?
Yeah, my father actually moved GCHQ. So my father had been at a place, my father was older. He had me when he was 60. So he was active in the war, and he worked at a place called Bletchley Park, which was where
the movie.
He was in one of those huts. He was in charge of naval intelligence during the war, and was friends with Turing, and one of his better friends was a guy called Hugh Alexander, who's in the movie, but they kind of is not at all who he was. And Hugh was our neighbor. Hugh was a strange chap. He was a genius. He was a guy who was he played chess. He was the chess champion of England for many years, mathematician, but he couldn't really tie his shoelaces, and he couldn't do what normal people can do. Yeah. So he couldn't, my dad kind of, he was an immensely capable man, but not necessarily in the way that everybody else is. So my dad sort of shepherded him around. My dad had a facility to be good. My dad was not bright like that. He had a facility to be able to help people who were geniuses or genii.
I love that. I love that.
Get their work done. And so after the war, he was charged to move GCHQ to someplace else where it would be expanded and secret. And my father like all mildly eccentric English people, had his eccentricities, and he loved to play a game called croquet, which is what Americans call croquet. And the best croquet club in England was in Cheltenham. So my dad decided, therefore, that GCHQ should go to Cheltenham.
I didn't know they didn't call it croquet over here. They don't call it croquet in the UK?
People who know the game call it croquet.
Wow, okay.
And so GCHQ remained for many years secret. But when I was about 10, maybe even a little less before that, it stopped being a secret, and it was just became too big, and everybody knew what it was. So there I was, living in my home, in my folks' home in Cheltenham, and I've just reread a book that was formative to me then. Probably I had read it a little bit later, more like when I was 15, but and it was David Niven's autobiography, his first autobiography, called The Moon's a Balloon. And I loved it. And it was about him leaving England and moving to Hollywood. So I don't know if deep within my psyche there was this sort of idea I just grew a moustache to emulate David Niven. I don't know if deep within my psyche that, there was this thing, but I just rereading it, I loved it again. And I think there was this sort of sense of, an Englishman in America. Of course, everything's changed. And I haven't had the kind of success that David Niven had, but I think that seed was probably sown early on, around about the time that we're talking about.
So what did you do? Were you already acting over here, or did you have an eye on going to America? Or how did it happen?
So no, I was completely something. So I went to university. I studied to become a lawyer. I became a barrister in England.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know.
I worked with lawyers, so I'm not a fan.
Yeah, well, although I think that many lawyers. I'm
sure they're nice, some of them.
Well, I don't know if they're nice, but I think some of them are brilliant. And it certainly is any education is great because it makes you think.
Yeah.
But lawyering wasn't for me. So I became a barrister. And then in order to practice as a barrister, you have to do something called pupillage in England. And I thought, well, if I do that, that's going to be my life. So I want to I hadn't taken a year off before, many people take a gap year. I hadn't done that before university. So I took a gap year after that turned into a gap lifetime. I came to America, and
where did you land first?
I landed in Newark, New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Yeah. And we had one family friend. It was a friend of a friend. They lived in Hasbrook Heights, which is a little village in New Jersey. And I was maybe 21, 22, quite sheltered, I suppose. And this was in the days when I flew across on one of the first Virgin Atlantic flights. This was in the days before everybody had been to America. And now I think everybody in England's been to America. Everybody in America has been to England. That wasn't the case then. And my friends, one had gone to America. My dad and mom done it.
Also that age, everything's intense, isn't it, at that age? Like, were you like feeling very torn about your career and what you're going to do, and because you put the time in?
I had no thoughts of career.
Really?
I had thoughts of, truthfully, I had thoughts about girls. And I had thoughts about not doing my career because I thought I'd just return and do that. And then I spent the first night in Hasbrook Heights, and then I remember going to the newsagent and buying a newspaper. It was a Sunday, and I was astonished because the newspaper in England used to be about that thick. The newspaper in Hasbrook Heights, it was the New York Times, was about that thick. It was just fit. I mean, it was like an encyclopedia. And I thought that when she gave it to me, I gave it back. I said, "You've given me too many." And she said, no, that's the whole thing. So I was looking for places to live and jobs and all this. And I then went into New York, and that thing of the skyline as you see, as you're going across the river. And it's such a remarkable place, and the way it looks is so remarkable. And then I arrived at a place called the Port Authority, and suddenly all of my senses of danger get alerted, and you walk out of the Port Authority, and in those days 42nd Street was everything was peep shows, and come and see this naked woman, and that's not the kind of women that I wanted to meet. I was moving to America, and I walked along, this thing wearing my backpack, this 42nd Street. And I remember thinking, I've definitely come to the wrong place. This is not at all what I wanted to see. And then I went a bit further, and then there's the library, the New York Public Library is there, and we went in there. Anyway, I spent maybe a day walking around New York, and then called the people that I was staying with and said, I'm going to stay. And they probably were very relieved. And I went to the YMCA, which was up on 76th Street, maybe.
And at the time, probably safe, because I just have to say, my husband had the same experience. Oh. He got in a cab, but in LA, and was dropped off at Skid Row.
Oh yeah.
No, this is like, oh, this is Hollywood.
Yeah, right.
It's quite overwhelming going to another country by yourself and just, hello, I'm here.
Yeah.
I think the YMCA is not safe anymore. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's all gentrified now. But when I left, it was starting to get like kind of dangerous even to go to the YMCA.
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know that it was that safe, but I mean, I was pretty, I remember paying the extra, $4 and for $25 getting a room all to myself. And I remember getting in there and putting my things there and locking I had my stuff stolen. So yeah, it wasn't, now I remember, but I, closed the door and locked it and put the chair, I was fiercely aware that I didn't understand anything about the way things went on in this city that I was now in. It was a different world than what I'd grown up in, but I was excited by it. It was vibrant and just so alive and exciting. I really liked it, and yet I was frightened. And then inside this little room that I had, there was a black and white television, and TV in America was this thing that in England you had 3 channels when I was growing up, and they got 1 more just about the time that I was leaving. And everything ended at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night. And here there was a thing. I had the television that you had the dial that you turn. You had to put the antenna on the top, but
it never ends. I remember over here when it went off, and I was like to my husband, "Wait, what happened? Yeah, I didn't understand. The TV just ends."
Yeah. So then I was watching endless television. Now as I realize now, English television is amazing because
Yeah.
it's interesting. And American television, a lot of it is just crap. But a lot of it's great. But just for this multitude of channels, I would just click, click, click and not really watch anything. But
Yeah.
the World Series was playing, and this was, I don't know what year, but it was the World Series between the, it was called the I-70 series between the Kansas City Royals and the St. Louis somethings. And George Brett was the hero of that. Anyway, so I watched that. And that was another thing. Like, oh my God, baseball. I don't even understand what's going on, but I love it. And it was just so, it was, I don't know, there was something, you know, I'd grown up watching TV in England, and America was in my ken, but not something that I had ever experienced.
Cardinals.
The Cards, yeah. And it was, so anyway, I started messing around in New York City, but I was, truth be told, I had designs on trying to be an actor, but I was too sort of afraid to do it. I was too afraid to get up in front of people and make a fool of myself.
And had you admitted to yourself that you had designs on being an actor, or was it kind of a...
Yeah, I had, but it's still, it would sort of, so I got a job being a bartender, a waiter and a bartender. And I think I probably would, when people asked me, what are you really doing? I would probably say, well, maybe I want to be an actor. I remember trying to go to a class in New York at a place called the HP Studios and being very frightened. You know, I still get stage fright, and it was something I had to learn to overcome. I mean, the reason why I didn't do it when I was 20 was because I was sort of, in a strange way, I'm sort of ashamed to admit, paralyzed with fear.
But everyone is, and I think it's an interesting journey at what point people, because I did that and I never ever got the validation I thought I needed to accept that I was an actress, because I was a bit different, because I was doing the whole, oh, I'm not thin enough, someday I'll be perfect and I'll start doing. And I remember the day I woke up. I remember the minute I woke up. I don't know how many books in I was. And I thought, I'm a narrator. I remember the actual minute that I was just like, that I became that. It was after a couple of years of desperately like doing anything else, because like, how am I going to make a living? But do you remember ever at a point thinking, this is who I am, I'm an actual professional actor? Do you remember when that happened for you, that feeling?
Well, yeah, I do. Yes. So for 2 years, I gallivanted around America. I went to Aspen, and I managed a ski lodge, and I lived in New Orleans. And so I got some courage from somewhere eventually, and I realized. And you
got the girls, right, because of the accent.
There were, yeah, exactly. That's another shameful thing, but yeah. And I went to New Orleans, I went to Nantucket. I was, well, let's put it this way. At a certain stage, I thought, well, I'd like to stay, but I wasn't entirely legal. Yeah. So I applied for a visa and at this stage, it was called the Green Card Lottery.
Oh, you did that? You didn't win that, did you?
Unbelievably, I won.
I didn't believe anyone actually won that. I thought it was like a myth in all the pubs because I used to hang out at the pubs, you know, with my various Britishy boyfriends.
Yeah.
And nobody believed, and also my poor husband who
Yeah.
actually married an American and never got his green card until the day he was moving back here 5 years later.
Oh, wow.
It took them that long. You won that green card.
I
It was
don't
real.
know. Yeah, fortune just, truth is I am an incredibly lucky person, and that piece of luck came to me. I wouldn't have stayed, really. I would have been able to stay. And I wanted to be more serious than being a bartender or managing. So somebody told me this was going on, and that there was a glut of them. They hadn't been giving them out, but that they had to give out a bunch of them.
Wow.
So now, in my sort of defense, I did make a bit of my own luck. I wrote, and this was before computers, I wrote 1,000 letters and applications. It was just one application thing. And I sent them from, 10 from different mailboxes around around New York. And then I had made friends in Aspen, and I'd made friends in, so I sent because the theory was that you don't know where they'll be taking people from.
Okay.
So I sent 100 letters to my friends in Aspen and asked them to drop them in. And I sent 100 letters.
What are the letters, like an application form or
just
something?
Just an application.
Okay.
It was an application. It said, Gildart Jackson would like to apply for a visa, a green card.
I can't believe you're the guy that won it.
I know. I can't either. And it's sort of just it's a moment in my history that I don't really ever think of. But I wouldn't have met my wife. I wouldn't have had my kids, if I hadn't had that piece of luck shine down on me. So. And
your wife is really, I won't, because this call is about you, and I always say that because we have male and female narrators, though, that are quite famous and quite up there in their careers. And whenever I have one of the female narrators on, people come up with questions for their partner, and I'm like, hello. And so I'm not going to do that to you. But I didn't realize when I was looking you up before the call that your wife, and this is a compliment, let me preface it. I was watching her in a TV show. I don't know who anyone is. That's part of the thing I want to tell you about later. And I really hated her. Like the part she was playing, I was like, who? So much so, such a visceral dislike for this character that I actually Googled her.
Wow.
And
what was the TV show?
I'm really horrible with names. It was in Britain, and it was like honestly, I think she was like the American coming over here, and she was corrupt. Can't remember the name. It was like it would have been a British thriller, ITV maybe. And she was like corrupt. She was so hateful. I was like, who is that woman? And I looked her up and literally compared, the other things she's been in. And in my mind, I remember thinking, wow, that is some serious acting.
She is. So for those of you who don't know, her name's Melora Hardin, and she is probably best known as being Jan on the American version of The Office. And she's a remarkable actress. She was on a show called Transparent. She's done many parts but specifically those two, Jan and Tammy on Transparent, where I watched it and I knew it was her, but I hadn't seen that person before, the person she was playing.
That's the thing.
Surprised.
Suspension of belief.
Right. And just commitment to and ability. Because she's not at all actory. Certain people are very actory, and she's not in the slightest bit actory. But she's very, very good.
But it's what I was saying about you. When I looked up your different parts, I was like, oh, wait a minute. That was him? I can't in my mind marry the different parts. Like when I looked her up, I don't know who anyone is. Let me just preface this ever. I'm lucky I remember what my last book was. So I looked her up for the specific reason of asking myself why I was having this reaction to the character and I must hate her in other things if I've seen her in it, because she's obviously a horrible human being. And it was literally just acting the part. And then there was another one you were in, and I'm not going to say, I think it was Trust No One. I mean, you're in like a lot of different things, and in every single one, you're completely different. Like, I've never put it together. And that to me is it's like the girl, I don't know if you've seen Killing Eve.
No.
You got to see Killing Eve.
Okay.
Again, I'm horrible with names. If anyone knows it, help me out. But the main star, she plays Russian. She's actually English. She plays a Russian psychopath.
Yeah.
Amazing actress.
Yeah.
You forget, your eyes are glued. And like the way you can do that, Jodie Comer.
Okay.
Jonathan says, so watch Killing Eve. So I don't know if it's a type of thing you like, but she
I will
makes it.
Well, it's very sweet of you to say that. I don't really think of myself. I think when I watch myself, I have different thoughts, but that's kind of you to say that. Thank you.
But I think it's what we're all striving for. And I was going to get to this later, but I think I realized by actually prepping for the interview with you, I don't really prep for interviews because I find that I like to just like figure it out on the call. Right. But I went down a rabbit hole. I'm like, wait, he was in that. That was him. And I thought, because I don't like awards, I should like awards, and I need to start doing the award thing. But when I was young, I was always completely lost in a TV show or in a series. I was that girl. It was the generation. Sorry. Are you still there?
Me?
Yeah, hold on one second. I lost your camera. Talk for a minute.
I'm talking. I'm
okay,
here.
Great. I've got you back. Okay. So I would lose myself in TV series, up way too late at night, watching too much. And I never thought, oh, this is the person acting this part. I believed the characters. And I'm very naive that way. I still do that. I listen to an audiobook and believe them. Do you?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I suppose people who act basically do it because they like that idea about being in a different body, being in a different world, being in a different story. It's exciting to do that. And one of the strange things when you choose to do it is that you understand more about the mechanism of actually making a film. And it's very hard. Then there's the amount of skill that goes into actually being the character and doing the acting part, but you don't ever really get to experience the story in the same way that a viewer does.
Yeah, to me, they're two totally different things, and I separate them. I don't think if I'm watching something, I'm not thinking it's Gildart. I'm thinking it's Gideon, and I'm capable still, and I think it might be a great strength. But in my career, it's also probably doesn't make me look incredibly intelligent, considering I don't know what anyone's doing at any point in time. But I believe I can still sit down in front of a show and forget that I'm not there watching it.
Right. I think that's the mystique of the whole thing. I mean, I love that. And I give over to it completely. I don't go, oh, I know what's going to happen. Oh, he's the baddie. Oh yeah. I am just on a train that's slowly going.
What about audiobooks though? Because narrators, I know so many narrators, they listen to audiobooks. I'm wondering if maybe they weren't audiobook listeners before they became narrators, because they listen to audiobooks and analyze the technical aspects of the other narrator. And I don't do that. I turn off my narrator brain when I'm listening to an audiobook. Do you watch movies or shows and analyze what an actor, and especially good actor, is doing? Do you do it with audiobooks? 400 audiobooks. How did you find time to do all that? And when did you start audiobooks? How long ago?
So when I was, a brief between the age of 20 and 30, I met Melora, when I was 22 or something.
Where
And
did you guys meet? Somewhere really romantic. I love hearing how people
we met
met.
at the wrap party of a movie that she had starred in that I gate crashed. And so by that stage, I came, when I got my green card, I thought I need to be a bit more serious. And so I came to LA. I had designs on doing what I'm doing, but and then I was a lawyer, and I thought, well, all the powerful people in Hollywood are lawyers, so I should just become a lawyer out here and then make some movies and give myself a part, which just shows you how incredibly naive I was at that juncture.
Sounds like a good plan, actually.
Well, it didn't work out quite that way. I took the California bar. I became a lawyer. I applied for the first job I applied for. The guy gave me a job, and I became a lawyer, and I worked for about 5 years.
And let me just say, when I was slagging lawyers off earlier on the call, they were for an oil company. So I do have an excuse. Maybe other lawyers are very nice.
It's a difficult job because you've got to fight. Yeah. And if you're a fighter, that's great. But not everybody is. So a lot of people who become lawyers because they have the grades or whatever end up in a profession where fighting is what's expected of them, and it beats on their soul. And it beat on my soul, and I fortunately was able to get out. I'd met Melora. I was seeing what a life was like that I had designs on. So I quit. And that's another whole story, but I was incredibly lucky. The guy I worked for was amazing and a fighter, but for some reason he and I got on. And then when I quit, I was an actor, and I was also trying to write, and I did quite quickly get a job on a general hospital, a soap opera out here. And but then I was like, okay, what's going to happen? Well, I wanted a job, and I wanted to, move along with my career, and it wasn't happening. And I was in America. It's called going to network, meaning they're doing a TV show, they're casting the regulars, and they have you go to network, meaning you and 7 other guys go to a big room, and one after another you go in, and somebody gets the part. But you all make the deal, so you're all excited about the fact that you're going to be working on this thing for 7 years. And most of these shows don't go anywhere. But this one, I went to network on a show which I thought was maybe going to be a good one, and it ended up being a good one. It was Battlestar Galactica, which ran for many years. And I didn't get it. And I actually even more painfully got asked to leave. You go in and you do it, and then you walk out, and you go in and walk out, and then the guy came out, the casting director came out and said, "Oh, yeah, thank you, blah and blah, could you stay? And Gildart, blah and blah and blah, thank you so much for coming in."
The way they do it, they can do it in a way. I remember the one job I was being told to leave, and they changed their mind at the last minute. It was for the Sun. I didn't even know it was for the Sun at the time. I was just like, and I was told, "Oh no, keep her instead. We're going to get rid of this other one. The other one, she's too pretty. We want her instead. We want someone to look like a bedraggled housewife." They let me stay because the other one was too pretty.
No, that's not good.
They don't mince words, and Hollywood's even, you can't afford an ego over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the long and the short of it is I came home from that audition and I was, upset that I hadn't gotten it and concerned because, I was not sure whether I was going to be able to make enough money to. Fortunately, Melora was making money. We weren't married yet, but we were together.
How long had you been there at this point?
In America?
Yeah, in America.
Maybe 10 years.
And did the thought in your mind, what was it? Maybe I'll go back to being a lawyer, or maybe I'll go back to the UK?
No. I didn't have that thought. I knew deep in, if we had kids and we were starving, I would be able to be a lawyer again. And I knew I could make some money and, all of that. So it was useful to have that and to feel like, but, I like to work and I'm a good worker and I knew I could do something if all else failed.
Do you know what strikes me about you? I don't know if you even realize that you do it, but you keep repeating, I'm a very lucky person.
Oh, well, I am.
But I think that people that believe that they're lucky.
Yes, probably.
That's why they're lucky, because they have like, that's who they see themselves at. So they find luck, because we see what you said. The thought of like giving up wasn't my first thought. A lot of people, the thought of giving up would be their first thought. Oh, it just goes to prove what I've always known about myself. But you were like, I'll just stay, I'll do it, something should work out.
Yeah, well, I certainly, I have had, and I still have my own wishes that things had worked out more. But, in my career, I am, in my family, I really do think I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I mean, so I came home and I said to myself, you know what? And I would go to the library, this was in the days of libraries, I would go to the library and I would rent audiobooks because I loved listening to audiobooks. LA is just the right city for audiobooks. You drive all the time, you put these things in, and I'd be read to. My mum back in England had told me about audiobooks. It was a sort of nascent time of, well, certainly they didn't exist when I was growing up.
Penelope Keith did Agatha Raisin. Your mom would have loved that. Penelope Keith was amazing.
She was more into murder and thrillers. But she lost her sight, or she didn't quite go completely blind, but over the course of many years, she had something called macular degeneration. So reading became less and less easy for her. And at a certain stage, she discovered audiobooks. And she would have these things, and when I would go home and visit her, I would listen to them, and we would listen to them together. So I kind of got into the habit of reading. I think I read more because of audiobooks than I would do if I was reading a book. Although I did just read the David Niven, and I do read still, but.
So is that how the shift to audiobooks came about?
Well, I was so frustrated and that I went online. You could do that by then. And I called my agent and I said, I didn't get that part. How do you get audiobooks? How does that happen? And my agent said, oh, no, nobody gets audiobooks in LA. It's a New York thing. And I just didn't ring true to me. So I I had these two books in the car. One was produced by somebody called Tantor Audio, and one was produced by Blackstone Audio. And I wrote them both an email saying, I'm an actor, and I had some quite good credits by then. I'm an actor, I love audiobooks. How do I do this? They both wrote back and said, you send us you attempt to do it. using a microphone. So I did and sent it to them. And within, I think, 10 days of that initial email inquiry, they had both hired me to do a book.
Oh,
And
oh, okay. Sorry to interrupt you, but this is a place I want to, because something you said before the call, what you reminded me of is when the whole, you've heard about, I don't know if you've heard about the whole AI thing, and all the narrators freaked out and everyone was like, the robots are coming to take our jobs, and everyone's like worried one way or the other. And one of the production companies I work with over here, the guy's very, very close with us, and so he called me. I get the feeling he was calling a few narrators, and I was like, I don't really care. I'm just gonna do what I do, because I'm not that far side thinking. And he said, the narrators I know that are really working actors, that are narrators with like hundreds of books, a lot of them aren't even on social media, don't even care about that kind of thing. And when I mentioned somebody's name and you were like, oh, I don't know who they were, I just realized how, you know, by the way, I'm going to totally invite you to the Narrator's Cup of Joe group after this call, but we do need to fix it a little bit because we're all really friendly guys. But yeah, but we're in a bubble, and when you join as a narrator now, you quickly learn the social networking and the marketing, and it becomes a thing, and everyone is online with everyone else, and it becomes a little bit overwhelming, the branding. I think you had an advantage being an actor first with the full life, but you are one of the narrators, and I'm holding this up, you guys, they do exist. You don't have to be marketing every single day and out there on social media and showing how successful we all are to be successful. There are narrators that are doing 400, 8,000 books like Gildart, and they are successful, and they're not having to plug and like say all the right things to all the right people all the right times. You see what I'm saying?
I think that, again, maybe it's a theme, but I think I just have, well,
you're going to say you're lucky, aren't you?
Yeah, I was. It would happen to be kind of the right time.
Yeah.
And I have an English accent. I mean, you know, I am good at the job. I fully acknowledge that. I have a pleasant voice that puts you to sleep, and I am good at reading out loud.
And you work hard, and you put the work in, and you continue working. I do that.
And I, you know, I've done 400 books or however many it is now, and I've never been late with a book. You know, I'm reliable. I'm a dutiful individual. If I promise that I'll do something, I will do it. And so I just happened to come in, I think, at a time that was right, but also some people, you know, I've auditioned for a lot of commercials. I have a very good agent out here, a voiceover agent, although I'm totally solo with respect to audiobooks. But I've maybe done one commercial audition, one commercial. I've gotten one job, you know, selling something. I'm actually currently playing Alfred in the new Batman video game. So I've done more animation, motion capture work, but my voice doesn't fit commercials. It just doesn't. And my voice does fit audiobooks.
Yeah.
My talent and my voice.
You're a really good actor. That's the thing. You're a really good actor.
I also, you know, my wife is a great actor, but she can't do an audiobook. She doesn't want to do an audio. She doesn't want to sit in a booth and for whatever, however long it takes. I am. I like some solitude. I would go into a cave once a day anyway, were it not for the audiobook that I'm doing. I like to be alone for a certain part of every day. I love the fact that I have my family, and, you know, I love all of that. But I do need solitude. So audiobooks have given me that and have been really, you know, again, fortunately, from that day of doing that one book for Tantor and that one book for Blackstone, I have been employed, should I want it, since then. And I have not done any work. I mean, social media didn't exist then, thank the Lord, but I've not done any work on getting, you know, widening my circle or whatever. I've been, I suppose I work for about 5 different people now who each, apart from the 2, reached out to me, and I tend now to just say, yes, I'll do it if the book seems like fun, and I have a gap. I do basically a book every 2 weeks.
And I think, I mean, you do have several advantages. I mean, who are we kidding? You have the accent, you have the, but depending on how you use it, the accent could be a disadvantage depending on, you know, cutting off certain genres or books. You have that, you started at a time that it was easier to break in. You have acting experience, you're well known as an actor, but it just keeps coming back to me. And the more and more I realize, I do think it's different for people starting now. I think that you're smart to be like aware of like being out there and, you know, networking. And I think it's good, but it comes down to boots on the ground. If you're not in the booth narrating, you're not a narrator. It's the most important part.
I think so. And I feel like for me, going out, yes, fortunately, I came in at the right time, that now I'm a reliable entity in the world, and I just really continually employed if I want to be. And but then I had this other idea, which we'll talk about, which is called Fireside Reading. And
we're going to do that segue right after this, because we've also got some quirky questions, and one of them hits on that. So we'll start with that, and then we'll go to the rest of the questions. But finish the thought. I didn't mean. Well,
it's just that then I had this idea that required me to build something as opposed to sort of just happen into something. Yeah. And that's why I now am much more out in the world as an audiobook narrator. It was sort of, so I did an audiobook with another narrator. Well, we didn't meet, but she did half and I did half. She did the girls' part, I did the boys' part. And out front of my house here, I don't know if you're all from America or England, but in America, somebody had this, what I think is a lovely idea, to put a little, it's sort of like a tiny little library that sits in front of your house. It's about this big.
Oh, we've seen those, yeah. But keep talking, because I've seen them. Maybe other people haven't.
They're really fun, and I love them. And you just walk past somebody's house, and they've got this little box in front of their house, and you open the thing, and oh, look at this! Here is a book that you're supposed to leave a book and take a book. And if you don't have a book, next time you're going for the walk, you leave a book. So, I thought to myself, I want one of those as an audiobook library, because I have all these audio books that I've done, and they always, in the old days, they used to do this more often. They would always give you a book, your book, as a CD. And so I built one of these little sheds, and it sits in front of our house.
That's so cool.
It's the only audiobook library that there is, apparently. Or solo.
That's so sweet.
And who should be walking past one day but the woman who I had done this book with? She's a neighbor of mine, and I didn't even know she was from LA. We never met. And her name is Andrea Ems.
Oh my God, you know Andrea.
I know Andrea because she suggested I call you and say, how about having me on your podcast?
Yeah, because Andrea's, everyone loves Andrea.
Right, and she is Miss Audiobook.
Yeah.
So she said to me, A, we should go and have lunch. And B, when we had lunch, she said, okay, what are you doing not talking about audiobooks and getting out into the world a bit about this? Especially
Andrea's the queen of that stuff.
She, and especially since at the time, so Fireside Reading is the first audiobook I ever read. My dad was old and sadly dying. This was around the time that I was becoming an actor. So I went back to England to hang out with him. And I took him downstairs and sat him in front of the fire, and I read to him. I read to him the book that he had read to me when I was a little one. One of the books that he read to me was Sherlock Holmes, which is every English boy's sort of favorite. And I read him all, many of those tales. I was there for several months, and
Love that.
every evening we would sit there and I'd read to him in front of the fire. Sadly, later he died, but that was my sort of foray into reading a book out loud, like a full book out loud. And then I started doing audiobooks, and I always thought, wow, this is great. But there's another element, which is the fire and the camaraderie and all of this. And
then when you start that, just to leave you so you can get to this question as you go, Barbara wants to know, can you talk about your experience of the Winnie the Pooh fireside reading? So let us know how it started, and then tell us.
So, and that's a great question. I'll get to it. But then along came COVID. So I'd had this like, oh, I'd love to do an audiobook in front of the fire. And then there wasn't a way to turn that into a thing because of some of these books are long. But then along came streaming, and along came the ability to get more information on a DVD. And then COVID. And I thought, well, if my dad was alive now, he would be sitting in a village in England and lonely. And I have the ability to sit in front of my fire right behind me and read to him and other hymns that might be that are right now really alone in the world. And it was just, it was a nice moment when I realized I could actually do something for somebody else. And so I got on Instagram, had to have my daughters show me how to do it, which was my first ever moment on Instagram. And I started reading on April the 1st, 2000, whatever that was, 2 years ago, shortly after the lockdowns. And I started reading the first chapter of Great Expectations. And I have been reading every day that I can since then at 5 Pacific in front of the fire.
For about how long is each session?
For about 20 minutes. 20 minutes, part of a chapter or a full chapter or 2 chapters, depending on the author. We've read 22 books, including, long books like Moby Dick and David Copperfield, Great Expectations. And I have a group that follows me every day and joins and chats, and it's just a lovely thing to do. And Dreamscape, who I had done many books for, the audiobook producer, and also a video producer, I was chatting with them about a book, and they said, well, wait a second, let's do I use my iPhone when I record in front of the fire.
Yeah. They
said, let's do a real one. Let's do it like with a nice camera and a crew and
wow.
Costume and let's make a proper, your sort of image of what fireside reading would be. So we did a test, and the test was The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. And they definitely had this idea that that this would work for kids' books. The long form kid book that every parent wants to read for their child, but doesn't have the time. I mean, it's a lot, you know, to read The Wizard of Oz to your child takes 6 or 7 hours. And some people can do it. Absolutely. And I love the fact, I love that my folks read to me and we read to our kids. But, you know, I realized with our children that sitting them in front of a video was great. Sometimes you try to do it as little as you can, but sometimes it's like a godsend. You can actually talk to your wife for 10 minutes.
And also it's not a disembodied voice. Well, because for a child, that probably makes a difference.
Right, maybe. But also you're giving them this book, this beautiful book, and there's no cutting in the thing. It's just a guy reading. It's a sort of pleasant guy reading in front of this fire, and it doesn't cut, and there's nobody's hitting anybody on the head.
Yeah.
And you're experiencing these, and these books are all in the public domain. They're 100 years old, and they're good. So it just so happened that Winnie the Pooh, which was a favorite of mine when I was a kid, and a favorite of our daughters when they were growing up, came into the public domain. So it was the second book that I did as a fireside reading. And it's beautiful. It's such a simple, kind, he wrote it using his boys' teddy bears, and he personified them, and just whimsical, silly ideas, very English, sort of eccentric, fun stuff. And we've done Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, and 16 fireside readings we've done, the sort of professional fancy thing. And we're still doing it. Right before I got on here, I'm going through the Nutcracker and Mouse King, the original E.T.A. Hoffman book.
But do you know what you can hear in your voice, though? The difference between, like, when you're acting, you obviously were very successful at different points and everything. That's your job. Narrating, it's still a job. This, you made it. It's love. That I know, to get all woo-woo, but I can hear it in your voice. This is like, look what it's like that. It's like when your muse gives you this gift, and we're always shocked when we've acted on it, and it's like, wow.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's an interesting sort of coming together of various things, because I do audiobooks. I am an actor. The world has the ability to live stream, and also to video on demand. And these books, I have an English accent. A lot of these books are written by English people. They are, they're Peter Pan has to be one of the greatest books ever written. I mean, it is so, every other book, kids book that you read, whether they know it or not, they are using Peter Pan. They are what J.M. Barrie does in that book is all of the different tropes that we get so used to in kids books are in that book, and he sort of created it. And
it became part of us. We're walking around with parts of that book as who we are. We wouldn't be who we are, none of us, if it weren't for that book. And Winnie the Pooh. And
yet now, and I've worked many, many times for Disney. I don't have a bad thing about Disney, but Disney condensed that into
money.
Well, into 2.5 hours, I was going to say, or 2 hours. And then they also masterfully, but you think of, if you know Winnie the Pooh, the TV show, the movie, or if you know Snow White, you know only one way that Snow White looks. You only know one way that Tigger looks. He looks like that because you've seen it. Whereas if you read the book, your imagination goes off and just tells you that the author gives a description, but you are creating an imagination of what these characters are. And you're even imbuing them with things that the author doesn't say they're doing. I mean, all of this, I just reread, as I said, this David Niven book, and I had memories of all these hijinks that he got up to, which weren't in the book.
But it builds a muscle. The kids that read, it builds that muscle, and then you go off and you create your own. You go from there, and that's it branches off. But these days, oh my God, I sound like my grandmother. These days, but we can't lose that.
And because the world is different now, and this is to be determined. I don't know if this is going to be the case because we're very new with Fireside Reading. We've released the first 4 and only for the last 3 months. So we're finding out if people are going to find them and if people are going to buy them and share them with their children. But the argument is that this thing is a new, potentially modern way to experience some of the greatest things ever created by humans.
And that's the way that's how we're going to live with AI. We're going to marry the old with the new. We're going to have creative ideas, and we're going to still make beautiful things with the way the world is now. Like you've made a beautiful thing with the way the world is now.
And that's the way it's always been. I mean, assuming we don't kill one another, that's the way it's always been. And some people, it hits harder than others. You know, if you're in the north of England and you're a weaver and the looms come in, you lose your job. And I understand the upset about that. But pretty quickly, the world has changed. And, you know, I think you just have to get on with it, whatever it is, even if your business.
Okay, so I have some quirky questions. I'm going to throw at you in quick succession. So think on your feet here. Kim wants to know, did you have to get a wig to train to be a barrister? If so, are there different styles, lengths, etc.? Do you get to choose? Do you?
No, you don't get to choose. There's one, the different lengths is depending upon your status. So if you're a Queen's Counsel, it's a bit longer. If you're a judge, it's even longer. At least this is in my days. Yes, to get qualified, you have to do a few things. You have to pass the bar exam. You have to take a certain amount of dinners. You have to join one of the 4 Inns of Court, Gray's Inn, Middle Temple, Inner Temple, and something else. You have to eat dinners there, because the idea is that you are with the judges. The judges eat with you, and the idea is you become colleagues. It's a really good system, actually. It doesn't work quite as well as it should do now, but the system is, I'm not going to lie to you if I know you. If we have a relationship based upon my
that's why I started Cup of Joe. I'm not going to feel competitive if I become friends with all the other narrators.
So and that's why lawyers wear these wigs, so that if you have one beautifully hirsute gentleman, he doesn't have an advantage over the bald gentleman who, you know, everybody looks the same because they've all got this thing, and you wear the cape, the cloak. The idea is you're all the same. And no matter how eloquent or amazing you are, you're all going to give the same effort to your client, who, incidentally, you never meet. So the other thing about the way the arguments happen in court is that the lawyer, the solicitor meets, in England, the solicitor meets the client and then instructs the barrister. The barrister typically never, in the back of the cloak, there's a little pouch, and without turning around, the client would put the money in the pouch in the old days. So that you never were, they wanted to make sure that nobody was going to be a clever barrister who would lie and manipulate. You were going to present it as best you could and as best the truth should be presented.
So one of the questions was, and I guess it wouldn't apply then, Barbara wanted to know what kind of law did you practice? Was it general?
No, well, in England, I didn't practice. So I came to America and I practiced, I got a job with an entertainment lawyer because I knew I kind of wanted to do, so I worked for a lawyer, and he was an entertainment lawyer. He was in the book when I was looking through the books to sort of deciding. I knew I didn't want to go and work in a big firm. I wanted to work in a small firm. And I saw this guy, and he was entertainment law. Turns out he was basically a music lawyer. So it was functionally useless for what I was, what I had designs on. But he was really amazing lawyer. So I was entertainment law, a lot of music.
Okay, so Barbara wants to know what the scariest thing that's ever happened to you is.
Well, there are two types. There are two types of scary. Getting on stage is scary to me, and interestingly, much more debilitating conceptually. So once I'm on stage, I'm fine. Once I'm, auditioning, I'm fine. But getting there and
The thought of it.
Whatever that feeling is, I think I trained myself to think that was a bad feeling. I'm trying to train myself now out of that, and I have largely done so. But that's not real fear. That's my own psychology or lack of psychology. That's real fear. I've been attacked. I've been chased down a street at knife point.
Wow. In America or the UK?
In America. I've been in fights. And that feels completely different. It doesn't actually feel as bad as the fear of going on stage.
Ooh, but it would really help you narrating thrillers, wouldn't it? Because you would know the pacing and the excitement. You could like really draw on that.
Yeah, I mean, I love stories. I think I draw on that more, but I know what it's like to be chased down a street by at knife point. And in that moment, though, I wasn't afraid, it's not the same. It's a
survival mechanism. Don't you think that it's like your brain is just what you're going to do to get out of it?
But as soon as I got out of it, as soon as whatever those that chemistry happened, that
adrenaline,
to get out of it, I remember I ran home and came through the door and started to cry, and sort of then out came fear, I suppose,
Yeah.
or something.
Isn't that brilliant, though? Isn't that brilliant that, like, because I often wonder, like, what would I do? Because I always do thrillers, and I often wonder, what would I do if I was in danger like that? Would I be able to, like, take care of myself or deal with it? But you would, wouldn't you? Because you're strong in the moment when you need it.
Well,
And then later you break down.
I think it's a little, so my own theory on it is this. So I was walking down the street in New York. I just finished working as a bartender for the night. I had like $100 in my pocket. I crossed the street. I was silly. I was going down an unlighted street to get to home, and two guys. There was a guy ahead of me in the street, and well, the truth is that okay, he was black, and he was walking towards me, and I'm an uber liberal. I want everybody to love one another and everything be. So I had a conversation with myself. I did feel fear in whatever that thing is in that moment. I was like, this isn't smart. I'm not, Gildart. You're in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I then thought, if I turn and walk away, I will be a racist. And I don't want to be a racist because he's black. Is that really what my brain is saying to me? Be careful, And I didn't like that. And so I kept on walking. And at the last moment, I noticed that there was another guy on the other side crossing towards me. And my point is this. I had my own mental nonsense going on, which was getting in the way of all of these instincts that I was having. It happened to be coming from a good place of like, I want everybody to be the same, and I don't want to, be racist. And I'm not, but.
And you didn't think the obvious, I'm on a dark street and there's a guy I don't know coming toward me. Right, regardless, right. I mean, the obvious is even if he was white, you would have been scared. Well,
but I don't know. I mean, I should be able to walk down any street, and so should anybody. And but at the last moment, I said to myself, to hell with it. I know what's going on, regardless of color and anything. I know what's happening, and run. So I planted my foot in the ground and I turned back. And as I did that, he took out a knife, and the guy, the thing took out a knife.
Oh my God.
And I started to run. Now, I don't remember how big they were or anything. I'm quite tall, but I wouldn't call myself necessarily, I'm athletic. I played all the games when I was at school, but I'm not a fast guy. By the time we got to we ran together, them after me, for 2 blocks, me heading towards the light, and cars and stuff. And literally we were 4 yards away when this started. Less than that, 3 yards away when
I know how it ends, and I'm sitting here going, oh
my God. Yeah. Well, my adrenaline was such that within 10 yards, I was safe. If I didn't fall over.
People die all the time that way.
Yeah. So in response to your question about we will do it the right way, I believe that. As long as we don't have a story that's going on in our brain, a bunch of noise, which is obscuring your instincts. I happen to believe, and I happen to believe now, and I think acting is basically all about instincts. you know, if you're able to quieten your mind and listen to the truth, regardless of what society says, you say, blah, blah, blah. That's what I like about audiobook narration, because I get into the story. I really feel like I am telling this story to my listener. And I love that. I happen to have the good facility. I am a good kind of cold reader, but I think everybody who does the job is. It's an instinctual thing, and I think there's an incredible amount of power in instincts, and it's just getting out of your own. For me, it's getting out of my own way.
I never considered that. I never considered that I could. It's an interesting thing to think about. Take the instinct from inside the booth into real life, because I don't ever listen to my instinct in real life. But in the booth, that's all it is, which is why I like the booth. The booth, I'm free.
Yeah.
You could do that in real life, couldn't you?
Well, I think it's more a question of understanding then the noise and the voices and all of this stuff that you have when you are going through life, daily life. Or you know, I'm an Englishman who's done a lot of therapy, which is a strange thing from the point of view of where I grew up. But for me, that's all that therapy is, or that's what therapy is. It's understanding the noises in the noises in my own brain.
And your muse is your instinct at the end of the day as well. Your instinct is fireside reading. Your instinct is going to lunch with Andrea and contacting us. Your instinct is when you end up in your joy, which is really woo-woo. I can't stand that.
No, but I think you're right. I
can't think of another way to put it.
I think you're right, because if you don't follow those paths when you, and we talked about luck earlier, and I think a lot of that is just being open to what's happening as opposed to trying to force what's happening.
Okay, so now we've had a lot of comments. We don't have any more questions. We've got a lot of everyone wants to follow you, and they wanted to know if you Barbara wanted to know if you got away from the guys, but we covered that. What I'll do is I'll send you the chat after the call so you can read, because I always send the chat because the guests are like, wait, what are they saying? So I'll send you the chat after the call. And this has been just wonderful. You should come back someday after you've been doing Fireside for a while and tell us how it's been going. And by then it'll be so big I won't be able to get you to come on to book you. But
I will come back. I loved it, and it was I'm sorry I had to reschedule because of my jury duty, which was another.
Did you get a good case? Did anyone get murdered?
It was terrible. It was terrible. It was. I mean, so 14 days of our lives, me and the other jurors, was spent on a DUI, which I don't know if any of you are English means.
I was imagining bloody murders and you.
No, it was silly. But that said, when the 12 of us actually grouped together in this room, it was just like the movies.
Was it?
Yeah. And that's really why I wanted to do it. I
always hoped it would be. Was it like?
Yeah, it was.
All the characters and everything?
Even better than the movies, because everybody was smart, thoughtful, and we're talking disparate group of people, different ethnicities, different sexes, different sexual persuasions, different religions. I mean,
but let's reassure Lauren, nobody was injured by the impaired driver.
No, luckily not.
Okay, good. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
But everybody had really thought about it and had listened. It was not. It was a DUI, but it was not. There were facts and there were things that were missed out, and it was like, what's going on? why are we here? And we all kind of talked. I mean, I think I'm allowed to say, yeah, I am allowed to say, the guy was guilty as hell, obviously guilty. But it took a lot of, there were several different charges, and it took a lot of talking. And in that talking, I was astonished to realize everybody was thoughtful and kindly, that nobody wanted to be convicting this guy of anything.
Oh, I love that.
It
This
was
is
really
lovely.
a heartening experience. It was a great experience. I'm glad I did it, but the courts are so inefficient. That's the trouble. You get there and you don't get there till 10:30, and then the judge says, "Hey, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, guess what? I'm going to give you a 2-hour lunch." And everybody's saying, "I don't want a 2-hour lunch.
Go
I want a lunch." Do the trial.
I love situations where people are put together. Like, I remember that, like, when I was younger, you'd go on like a temp job or something, and it's like a bunch of you would never have met each other in the world, and by the end of the day, you're all like friends. I love that.
It was that, and with the added element of these are responsible people. So
yeah.
I guess while it was frustrating, that system, which was, I suppose, just a system that was created by some smart people hundreds and hundreds of years ago, 12 good men and true, now good men and women and true, it works. And
that's because you hear the news and it's easy to become disheartened.
Right.
Yeah, it's good. And it's a reminder, we don't always hear the good stuff. We don't ever hear the good stuff anymore.
No, I think that's one of the problems, depending on what you listen to. But maybe if you listen to this, you get other stuff.
Yes. And this is going to be out in 2 weeks. I am so grateful for you having taken your time. I'm still a little bit of a fangirl.
Well, thank you all for joining, and it was really sorry to just eternally talk all about myself.
No, this is the perfect kind of Joe call. This is what we're all about. I'm so going to have you back. We're opening new slots in September, so I'm thinking the fall you can come back and tell us your heartwarming tales about your fireside readings.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Gildart.
All right.
And thank you guys.
So much. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, goodbye.